Hello, this is Mrs. Smeckens, and in this lesson series, we're working on comparing texts, being able to show how texts are similar and different to each other. And we've been really centering our instruction on not using the Venn diagram, but instead using a different organizational tool, a T-chart. We've talked about several advantages of a T-chart, that it allows us to collect information in an organized way. We can keep the details separate for text A from text B, but still have some kind of order or groupings in each of the rows. Well, there's another advantage to the T-chart. Besides, it helps the reader take notes and stay organized in their thinking. It also helps the reader in preparing to write. You know how many language arts teachers, after doing all of this reading about two texts and all this note-taking and all this talking, you know we're going to want you to write about your comparisons and your contrasts. Well, if you had read and taken all your notes in the form of a Venn, then no matter how many details you have, this is going to be kind of a scary approach to figuring out what are you going to write and how are you going to write it. Some kids would just start writing a list of details, a list of sentences about every one of these sticky notes, and that's going to be a mess. It's going to be a mess in organization. The power of the T-chart is it doesn't just help you keep your information organized as a reader, but it also serves as a pre-write. So let's say that after looking at studying two texts, your teacher said, okay, so now I want you to use that information. I want you to write multiple paragraphs comparing these two stories. Okay, well, let's think here. What do we know about paragraphs? A paragraph has a topic sentence and supporting details. Right. Okay, now, what I want you to know is that everything you need to write is in the T-chart. It's a no-brainer for writing. It has done the work for you. If you've already done the reading and the thinking and the collecting and the organizing it, you're ready to write. Let me show you what I mean. So we need a topic sentence and we need supporting details. Okay, so you recognize that this on the screen here is kind of representative of a version of this pretend T-chart, right? So text A with details, text B with details, and each row has a different category, different grouping of details. Okay, so now when you go to write your first body paragraph, not introduction, not conclusion, I'm talking about middle paragraphs, okay? We'll talk intro, conclusion on another day. But the body paragraphs, when you're ready to write your first body paragraph, here's what I want you to know about that category. Whatever that category is, and remember in literature, it's story elements, so main characters or setting or plot or theme, whatever the category is, watch. It will serve as the topic sentence. In other words, the first sentence of that body paragraph is going to be you introducing what component, what story element you're talking about in this paragraph. So you introduce it. Okay, so if this was main characters, then you might say the main character in Cinderella is Cinderella and Little Red Riding Hood is Little Red. So I introduced the category via the topic sentence. Okay, so now the remaining sentences in a paragraph are called supporting detail sentences, right? And so you're supposed to be telling me about Cinderella and Little Red. So now those supporting detail sentences are going to be the very details that you collected about Cinderella and about Little Red. But remember what we did in the last lesson. You're going to want to kind of weave back and forth between each of the main characters. And you weave back and forth by talking about their similarities and their differences. And so you need some of those transition words. So you'll talk about each of the characters and some of their differences, and then both of the characters at times and how they're similar. Do you see how these become your supporting detail sentences? Here, these are your supporting detail sentences. Here's your topic sentence. You know what I want you to know? Look, every row on the T-chart is a paragraph. Did you hear me say that? Did you hear me say that? Let me say that again. Look. Every row on the T-chart will be a body paragraph. Second body paragraph, topic sentence, supporting details. Third body paragraph, topic sentence will be the category, supporting details. Do you see it? Do you see that no-brainer organization compared to that? What? All I got is a bunch of details, and they're a hodgepodge mess. There is no organization on the Venn. The Tchart, your best friend. Yeah, so let me add a few things up here to our anchor chart. So we've learned how to collect information from two texts, list the details, right? Group them by categories. But now when it's time to write, every body paragraph needs a topic sentence. And so I need a topic sentence. What's that going to be? The category, whatever the middle grouping, the facet is that I'm comparing. Plus, paragraphs need more than one sentence, right? So in addition to a topic sentence, then you also need to provide supporting details. And what are the supporting details? They're these bulleted things that you noticed from the text and you thought about, and you're going to use what you know about similarities and differences, those transition words, okay? And so as I'm adding this up here, what today's lesson is all about is the fact that when and if you have to write about two texts you did a Tchart on, don't sweat it, you guys. This is so not a big deal because each row is a paragraph. Each row is a body paragraph. If you have 3 categories, you have 3 body paragraphs. If you have 4 categories, you have 4 body paragraphs. Yeah, you need an introduction and a conclusion. We'll talk about those on another day. But just the notion that this row, each row is a paragraph. But bam, it's not that hard. It's easy. So the Tchart doesn't just help the reader take notes and remember, helps the reader then write about their thinking as well. Okay, so let me kind of show you what this would look like. And I'm just going to use Cinderella and Little Red from our previous lessons, okay? And so we already know these stories. We already collected some information about the main characters. Remember, we did this. Cinderella sings and cleans, and she's compassionate and kind. And Little Red is walking to visit her grandma, and she's skeptical, but she's also compassionate, right? Okay, well, so watch Mrs. Smeckens do this. Let me go ahead and get a new piece of chart paper. And let me go ahead and now just show you what I mean. So in the middle, the main character, that's my category, right? Main character. And the category is the topic sentence. So here we go. In studying the main characters, so I mentioned the word. You have to mention the category. In studying the main characters, now tell me something about them. Cinderella and, I'm just going to abbreviate for shorthand, Little Red Riding Hood are both compassionate. Okay, did you see how I did that? I decided to start with a similarity. And so if I'm going to say something that is on both sides of the Tchart, compassionate, then I want to use one of these transition words. Are both compassionate. Cinderella is thoughtful about the mice trapped with her, and I can say, similarly, using a word like that, similarly, Little Red Riding Hood is compassionate as she goes to visit her sick grandmother. I'm just going to say G-Ma, okay? Okay, you see how I'm doing that? Okay, so I've referenced a similarity between both of them. Now, I could talk about another similarity, like both of these stories use animals as characters. But let me go ahead and reference what a difference, right? A contrast between them might sound like. In studying the main characters, Cinderella and Little Red Riding Hood are both compassionate. Cinderella is thoughtful of the mice trapped with her. Similarly, Little Red Riding Hood is compassionate as she goes to visit her sick grandmother, okay? However, Little Red Riding Hood has a suspicious and skeptical side to her. Whereas Cinderella is always kind and optimistic. All right, so when you talk about just one of them, then you usually do it in separate sentences. But when you have a both, then you combine those details together and use it in more like a compound sentence or a compound subject in the same sentence. All right, whereas Cinderella is always optimistic and kind. All right, I'm abbreviating, but you see what I'm doing here, right? And did you see how I took the category main characters and I, boom, made that my very first sentence of this paragraph, because that is the topic sentence. All right, the topic sentence comes out of the category. You have to introduce, well, what's this paragraph about? The main characters, right? Then you have to go into supporting details, and supporting details have to be similarities and differences. Each body paragraph should have similarities and differences, not just differences. And did you see how I referenced Cinderella and Little Red Riding Hood throughout this whole paragraph? Like, look, I didn't do all my Cinderella information in the first couple sentences and then all Little Red Riding Hood down here. I'm going to just kind of mark every time I mention Cinderella, and then here C stands for Cinderella. And I did that in green. Let me grab another color marker. I'll grab just a pink marker here. And I mentioned Little Red Riding Hood, okay? And then Little Red Riding Hood is here, okay? And Little Red Riding Hood. Do you see how I'm going between characters A and B, A and B, A? That's good writing. That's how we weave our different details. You don't want to kerplunk everything about Cinderella and then everything about Little Red later. You might as well write two different pieces of writing, all right? No, good writers can weave comparisons, weave contrasts between each other. Okay, help me with this next one. Help me with the next one. Let's jump to Cinderella and Little Red and look at the plot. Okay, the differences in plot. You study just the top portion there and get the details. I'm going to change our paper and then we're going to write this paragraph together. All right? Okay, so we're ready for the next body paragraph, right? Because this is a new row on the Tchart. This is the plot summary row, and each row is its own paragraph. So you better indent, right? Let's not forget to indent. Let's be strong writers here. Okay, so the first sentence should use what information? What should the first sentence include in this body paragraph? Something about plot or summary of the stories. Good, okay? Now, you can't just write plot. You can't just write summary. I need a sentence. How would you write that sentence? Okay, I'll help you. Comparing the plots of the two texts. What? What about the plots? Are they vastly different? At first glance, they are, aren't they? I mean, we've got Cinderella and stepmothers and a palace and chores, and we have Little Red Riding Hood in a woods and a grandma and a wolf. Okay, so let's start with, it's okay to acknowledge that up front. Comparing the plots of Cinderella and Little Red Riding Hood would at first show them to be vastly different. Yeah, you can say very different or vastly different. Just sound smart. Come on. Show them to be vastly different. Okay, good. Okay, So now you've opened the door to differences, right? So I've got plots. That's my category. I've used it. Okay, so now I've opened the door to differences. So let's acknowledge a difference in each of the stories regarding the plot. I'll start with Cinderella. How would you say that? Say something about Cinderella that is different than Little Red. Cinderella is living with her mean step family while Little Red, tell me something, it has nothing to do with family really, right? Little Red is being chased by a wolf. Okay, Cinderella is living with her mean step family, comma, compound sentence, while Little Red Riding Hood is, what's the plot here? What's her problem? Chased by a wolf. Is being chased by a wolf. Okay, so we said, at first they seem vastly different. Let me point out the major difference. Okay, so now let's kind of come in with some similarities. All right, they're similar. What are some of their similarities? Let's tap into this trying to get somewhere. What do we got? Okay, let's both characters are what? Trying to get somewhere. Okay, so both characters, however, are trying to get somewhere. We could say somewhere special, somewhere important. Got it. In addition, what's something else similar about both these? The whole idea of they needed help. In addition, the stories are similar because, how would you say that? Good. In addition, the stories are similar because they both, you could say the characters, the main characters, needed help. Okay, now let's be more specific here and name the help. Cinderella received help from fairy godmother. Good. Help from her fairy godmother. Okay, FGM, fairy godmother. Okay, and Little Red Riding Hood got her help from the woodsman. From the woodsman. Got it. Do you see what we're doing here, you guys? Do you see how we can take the comparative thinking we've already done? And I can just use my notes and I can talk about it in class. I can use my notes and think about it and study from it and better understand it. Or I could use those exact same notes and turn each row into a paragraph using the categories of the topic sentence and all the supporting details. Weave them together to show similarities and differences. Let's do our color coding one more time. Cinderella is green. Every time I mention Cinderella, okay, both is Cinderella. Okay, Cinderella is here. So all those green marks, that's every time I mention Cinderella. Look, Little Red is mentioned. Okay, Little Red is mentioned here. Both is Little Red and Cinderella. And Little Red is mentioned here. We did it. We did the weave. We did the weave. That's what readers do. Yeah. Okay. So if you were in Mrs. Mecken's class, here's what I would ask you to do. I would ask you to take the information you generated from the stories Charles and the kids' table. And I had asked you in the previous lesson to make a Tchart and collect the information about main character, setting, plot, and theme. Okay, so use your own Tchart. If you're I didn't do that. Our teacher didn't assign it. I don't even know what you're talking about. Then you can use mine. I made one, okay, with Charles and the kids' table. And when I first made my Tchart, I came up with obvious differences. But I'm going to give you this one where I started to notice some similarities. Because remember, when you first do each of them, you just see differences. So I started to think comparatively, and I was able to fill out a little bit more for both sides. Okay, what I want you to do is use your Tchart, or you can use mine, but I want 4 paragraphs. Can you see them? Do you see the 4? I want a paragraph about the main characters. Compare the main characters in these 2 stories. Then I want a second body paragraph. I don't need transitions. I don't need an intro. I don't need a conclusion. I haven't taught you that. I haven't talked about it, so leave it alone. Just give me 4 good separate paragraphs, 1 for each of the story elements that you compared. If you were in Mrs. Smacken's class, that's what you'd be doing, but your teacher might have a better idea.